my elderly mother or aunt or grandmother, and we dispatch officers and take care of those kind of things. And those things have gone up somewhat over the last couple of years. Community service activities, which I think are paramount to the survival of a modern police agency, have risen significantly. In the year 2006, we had 869 incidents or activities that the police department participated in, and that ranged from officers going out and talking to pre-K schools, to talking to Browning and Girl Scout groups, talking to citizens groups like the Rotary or other kinds of organizations, so that they can put a face to the North Reading Police Department. And then our calls for service rose dramatically in 2006 over the previous 2 years by about 2,000. And all these things will come into play in a few minutes as I show you the two traditional formulas that are used to determine the level of staffing for a modern police department. Continuing on.
Ed, before you go on, just a quick question. Calls to service, taking a steep jump like this, what do you attribute that to?
In my humble opinion, it probably has more to do with the socioeconomic conditions of the country. There's a higher level of frustration where people, under ordinary circumstances, a small disturbance or a quality of life issue in their neighborhood, they may not pay attention to it under ordinary circumstances, but due to the stress of what people are confronted with today, I believe that rise in stress, people have a tendency to turn to or complain more often about neighbors, complain more often about activities for example, we've had to respond to many instances of kids playing basketball in streets or playing street hockey in streets. Under ordinary times, that's not a big deal. But I think people today, because of the stresses of living in this time, those things aggravate people more often. So there is a rise. The other reason for that is we still have a drug problem in the community. So we do get a lot of concerned parents and concerned people coming into the station asking for advice on what do I do with my child, what direction should I go, and those kind of things there. So it goes hand in hand with the fact that the more visible we become to the community, the more comfortable the community is coming back to the police department and asking our advice on different things. So it becomes a good catch-22 in a sense. So that accounts for probably that significant rise.
Thank
you. If you look at our department operates 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, and that's a tremendous amount of staffing needs and coverage in the town. Our day shift starts work at 6 o'clock in the morning, and they work a 10-hour day to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And you can read that the explanation of their typical day. They answer alarms, larcenies. They do a lot of administrative functions, and what we classify as administrative functions, for example, is picking up the town deposit from the treasurer's office, and they bring it to the bank. So that's a service provided to the town, and other duties as well, serving subpoenas, transporting prisoners to court, taking evidence to the state police drug lab. So those would be classified as admin duties. The afternoon shifts, there is somewhat of a kind of a change. People are now coming home from work. You have a tendency to, if people are tired, maybe they stop for a drink on the way home. So we see motor vehicle accidents in the afternoon and early evenings are more serious than the ones that we see during the daytime. There's more bodily injury. There's a greater chance of a fatal accident occurring in those evening hours, and hence our staffing levels are higher during this period of time. It's also the time when most domestic violence occurs, and we had 172 incidents of domestic abuse within our community last year in 2006. And as you'll see in a little bit, when we assign man hours to that, it takes an inordinate amount of time, which is mandated by the Executive Office of Public Safety. Our overnight shifts, again, there's a philosophical and a strategical, tactical change in in their patrol functions. They answer alarms, and they perform what we call community maintenance. They're watching for fires. They're on patrol at night, and we know that, you know, once people button up their houses and the temperature starts to drop, a lot of these older homes in our community, in communities around us, can be subject to fires. So that's one of the tasks that they're charged with. They patrol the streets, looking for fires, and they'll report them into the smoke or whatever. They report them into 911. We notify the fire department, and we respond with the fire department to those issues. They look for suspicious persons because at nighttime, during the daytime and at nighttime, you'll see what we classify as breaking and entering. That's typically when somebody's not in the property. But at nighttime, there's a change. Homes are broken into with people in the home. They call that a burglary. And much more dangerous situation, and the Commonwealth treats that vastly different. And they're monitoring the community for business breaks as well. We also average about, yes, Tom? Sure. I'm sorry, the afternoon shift starts at 4 o'clock and it ends at 2 o'clock in the morning. And the overnight shift starts at 9 o'clock and ends at 7 o'clock in the morning. So there is an overlap between all of our shifts, which gives us manpower during those critical junctures.
The overnight is when?
From 9 o'clock at night to 7 in the morning. The day shift, uniforms, I'll break it down into uniform personnel first. We average about 4 officers per shift. There is one shift that has 5 because we perform a licensing function on that particular shift, and most people coming into licenses appear on that during the daytime. But on average, we have 4 uniform personnel per shift. So that would be 12 uniforms per day. That is broken down into 1 supervisor and 3 patrol officers. Now, Monday through Friday, we have 3 detectives that are working, and as soon as they develop the confidence and skills necessary to be left on their own, we will change the shift. So there will be a night detective overlapping the day detectives as well. So we'll get better coverage in that area. And then we have 2 lieutenants and myself that are working. Kevin and I are working Monday through Friday. Lieutenant Brennan, for those of you who haven't met Kevin yet, was recently appointed to a full-time lieutenant's position. And we work on Monday through Friday, and we have a second lieutenant that was just appointed last week, Dan Jones, and we'll be working his schedule out Monday, and he'll likely overlap somewhat on the weekends and the afternoons for communication purposes and so on and so forth. We average about 200 to 250 contacts per day. That's calls for service. That's people walking into the station. That's other agencies calling our station. So it's busy in that building. It's in our dispatch area, and that has nothing to do with the new facility. We're just seeing that level of increase over the last couple of years. And what's happening is because of that level of activity within the building, we've had to take another patrol officer off the street. Normally we have 3 cruisers per shift on patrol in the community 24 hours a day. Between the hours of 7 o'clock in the morning and about 10 o'clock at night, we've had to, about 60% of the time, take 1 cruiser off of patrol and put them into dispatch to help handle that increased workload at dispatch. So how does that impact the community? Well, our response times have been slower. We have less people responding to the initial call for an emergency. But what we do, our policy requires that second officer will leave dispatch and back up those officers. But you can see that 5 or 10 minute delay that can occur in a crisis situation as we get that officer equipped into a cruise and responding to back up the 2 cars on the street. So that's been a change over the last 6 or 7 months. Yes. That's correct. Well, you know, for example, our safety officer, if he goes out and he liaisons with any CPC or DPW working on a project, that would be categorized under that. Our DARE officers, when they go to the schools, we account for their time in the schools there. Lieutenant Brennan is a member of the Community-Based Justice Program, in which he meets with the North Reading School Department, the District Attorney's Office, Department of Social Services, to discuss students at risk. And he does that not only in North Reading, but he does it also with the vocational school in Wakefield. So it's activities like that. That's right. That's right. And that's a sampling of the activities. You know, I couldn't in the time in the paper needed to be able to report out all the activities that we're involved in, but it gives you a snapshot of some of the things and services that we provide to the community. When you take a look at the staffing levels, what do we need to, and this goes right to the management study that was provided by benchmarking. There were two methods that I'm aware of. One method was touted by the local government police management organization. It's a collaborative, again, of the International City Managers and the International Chiefs of Police Organization, where they developed a formula, and it's kind of, I don't know if you can follow that on page 4 or slide number 1 there on the page, but what they look at is they suggest that you break down, you take out the most likely activities that your department is going to be involved in, and we've listed in here as alarms, arrests, crimes, domestics, a motor vehicle stop, motor vehicle accidents, medical calls, mutual aid, and calls for service. And you assign a man-hour multiplier to that. For example, if an alarm occurs at a house or a business, it typically takes 2 police officers, sometimes 3, if it's a large business complex, to respond to that. So the average man-hours would be about 1.5 hours. In reality, it could be more, because if it's an owner is responding, the officer stays on scene. If we find something amiss, the officer stays on scene. So a good average is about 1.5 man-hours per incident. You multiply that out, and we spend about 1,076 man-hours per year responding to alarms. And if you get down through each one of these categories, for example, you look at arrests. We had 340 arrests, and they average about 3 hours, man-hours per arrest, because that takes it takes the arresting officer, it takes the backup officer, and it takes the booking officer. It takes at least a minimum of 3 people. But in this day and age, it's under the present conditions of the way that new facility is designed, that would likely be bumped up to 5 or 6 man-hours, because the officer will have to stay in the building to conduct mandated by law 15-minute cell checks. So as you go through there, when you add all those categories up, we spend about 28,267 man-hours per year. You multiply that times 3, because it's a 24-hour-day operation, and you come up with 81,801 man-hours. Now you divide that by the number of hours that each officer is available in a given year. Now you look at that and you go, and you scratch your head, because the average officer is available to work 1,562 hours per year, versus you folks and myself and Kevin that are working 2,080 hours a year, and that's driven by collective bargaining agreements. The level of time off provided to our staff is significantly higher than anybody. You know, I would throw that challenge out, that the collective bargaining agreement for our members